Hello everyone, my name is Geoffrey from Arts and Métiers Institute of Technology, and I'm here to present a paper entitled Effect of Avatar Anthropomorphism on Body Ownership, Attractiveness, and Collaboration in Immersive Virtual Environments. So first I will present the context of the experiment, the background behind avatars and collaboration in VR. Then I will present the content of the experiment and the results, and finally I will conclude with our contributions and potential future work. So first, let's begin with the context. We're at the crossroad of computer science and psychology, and we are trying to use VR text to create great collaborative experiences. But in our labs, we're able to use, full body tracking technologies to control characters. But the thing is, when we consider consumer-grade VR devices, most of the time we see applications using only partial avatars and body representations with floating head and hands. And the question behind this research is how do facial properties of simple avatars controlled by consumer-grade VR devices affect body ownership, attractiveness, and performance in immersive collaborative virtual environments. So concerning the background behind avatars and collaboration in VR, let's begin with embodiment. So embodiment is the sense that emerges when the properties of a virtual body are processed as if they were the properties of one's own biological body. There are three dimensions behind the sense of embodiment in VR: self-location, which is the volume in space where users feel located, and it can be affected by bottom factors such as visual tactile simulations or perspective, so the viewpoint in the virtual environments, for instance, first person or third person point of view. Agency on the other end is the feeling of motor control when you're performing actions, and finally body ownership is the self-attribution of a body. So we know that bottom factors also impact the sense of body ownership, such as visual motor, visual tactile simulations, and overall multisensory integration. It has also been demonstrated that the appearance and especially the similarity between user and avatar's appearance can affect the sense of body ownership. And here we are interested to see how the anthropomorphism, so especially the facial properties of virtual characters, can affect the sense of body ownership in collaborative VR. And let's move on to attractiveness. Now, it has been demonstrated that the attractiveness of a virtual character can impact the way people interact and behave in collaborative environments. So in the frame of the Proteus effect, introduced by Ian Bailenson, it has been demonstrated that the attractiveness of the characters can change the relationship between participants in virtual environments. Now, on the other end, it has been demonstrated that realism is not a good predictor of attractiveness. However, shapes, proportion, and materials, and especially the consistency between these factors, is determinant when it comes to attractiveness. In this experiment, we want to see how facial properties can impact attractiveness of the virtual characters based on very simple avatars. Now, concerning attractiveness, it has been demonstrated that virtual characters' appearance can impact the way users interact and behave in virtual environments. So Ian Bailenson, in the frame of the Proteus effect theory, demonstrated that more appealing virtual characters can change the relationship between participants in a collaborative virtual environment. However, it should be noted that realism is not a good predictor of attractiveness. However, the shapes, the proportions, and the materials, and the overall consistency between these factors is determinant when it comes to virtual characters' attractiveness. Now it's closely linked to visual fidelity. So visual fidelity can be categorized in three dimensions: anthropomorphism, which is the object of our investigations; realism, which is the level of detail of meshes and textures; and finally truthfulness, which is the similarity between the appearance of the users and of their avatars. So in this experiment, we are interested by investigating the effect of the morphological characteristics, so the facial properties of very simple avatars, on the the collaboration and the communication between participants in a collaborative task. And communication in virtual environments is closely linked to what we can observe in real life. I mean, both verbal and non-verbal communication are critical factors when it comes to communication, both in real and virtual environments. And quality of communication and collaboration is impacted by gestures, animations, and gaze, and therefore we think that the appearance, the facial properties of a virtual character can affect the way people will collaborate together in a virtual environment. So let's talk about the content of the experiment. So we had 3 conditions based on very simple avatars to be controlled with a headset and controllers. So the first one is a robot with a screen-based face with both virtual eyes and mouth. The second one uses physical eyes and virtual mouth, and the last one both physical eyes and mouth. So here with the second condition, you can see that the robot is moving according to the user's positions in the virtual environments. And when the user is talking, you can see that the virtual balls are moving on the robot's face. Concerning the apparatus, we used 2 Vive Pro VR headsets in separated rooms. And we recruited 36 participants with previous VR experience, as we believe that in the near future, most people will have some experience with VR, so it seems to be more relevant concerning our results. So the procedure is based on 3 phases, the first one being the pre-experiment procedure with a consent form and a demographic questionnaire. The second one consists in the actual exposure to the virtual environments with first the instructions, then there is an embodiment phase where the participants are in front of a mirror in a separated room, virtual room, where they can embody and try to control the virtual character. And then we have the collaborative task. And finally, after the exposure, the post-experiment question. So here is the collaborative task. It's based on the puzzle completion game where users are to perform collaboration to be able to fully complete the puzzles. So the first puzzle can be completed using only the panel on the right side of the character, and then when they have to complete the second puzzle, they have to ask their partner for the position. So they have to collaborate to exchange information to complete the puzzles. Now concerning the measures, we use a body ownership questionnaire with 3 items using 7-point semantic differential scales and another scale for the attractiveness. And finally, we recorded the completion and the speaking durations. Now concerning the results of the experiment, we can see that first we observed no significant difference between the robots. And we can also see that the scores are quite high on the scale. That means that visual motor synchrony allow people to embody every avatars, even with such partial representation of the body. However, concerning attractiveness, we observed some significant differences between the first and the second robot and between the first and the third robot. That means that people rated the more anthropomorphic facial properties as more attractive in comparison with the very basic screen-based face. Now concerning the completion duration of the collaborative task, we can see that participants performed better using the second and the third robot. So that's interesting to see that more anthropomorphic faces leads to better performance in the virtual environment. We also observe the correlation between attractiveness and the completion duration of the task, which is kind of hard to explain, but we can argue that if you find an avatar to be more attractive, you will focus more on this virtual character, leading to a flawless communication between the participants. but it's only a new hypothesis. But concerning the relative speaking duration, we can see that there is no significant difference between the robots. That means that despite they do not interact more, they performed better using the second and the third robot. So let's conclude about our contributions and our potential future work. So at the end of the day, we observe no significant difference between the ownership scores of our three avatars, meaning that potentially the differences in the facial properties were too slight to affect the sense of ownership, and that they were potentially irrelevant compared to multisensory integration and visual motor synchrony. Concerning the impact of anthropomorphism on attractiveness evaluations, we can see that more anthropomorphic faces received better attractiveness evaluations compared to the very first robot. And we can now say that truthfulness and anthropomorphism can impact attractiveness evaluation, while realism is not a good predictor. Finally, concerning the performance in collaborative tasks, we can see that the anthropomorphism level may lead to better communication and better performance in the virtual environments. But there is still much work to be done to validate this new hypothesis. Now let's talk about the limitation of the study. So we based this experiment using non-organic models. So while the robotic characters might be suitable because we can avoid easily the uncanny valley phenomenon, because we use partial representation of the body and it's more acceptable with robots than with virtual humans. But we can imagine further experiments using organic models with advanced animation potential using blend shapes and facial rigs. And it has to be noted that we did this experiment with conditions only limited to facial anthropomorphism. And we know that communication is also driven by gestures and animation, so non-verbal language has to be studied also. So here are our potential future work. So the first part can concern the effect of anthropomorphism on social presence. So in collaborative situation, we aim to investigate how the facial properties can affect the sense of social presence in different collaboration and collaborative situations. So for instance, a study where the experiment can be based on a collaborative task and another one on a negotiation task, which is quite different regarding the way people interact together. And finally, we plan to use advanced facial expression with organic models to try to develop control models for virtual characters in VR, despite we use the headset and we cannot track the facial expressions. So here's an example of what we developed using procedural animations for the emotions, the gaze, and the lip synchronization. So it's based on what I learned when I was part of the Event Lab team during my postdoc. And I developed a tool that is freely available for researchers, and we plan to use this tool to carry out some experiments with realistic virtual humans in VR. So now it's question time, so thanks for your attention and let me know if you have any question.